Record. Okay, cool.
No one is.
So, yeah. So for those of us just joining us digitally, we are talking about yoga beyond the asana, and we're sharing what we do and how we feel about that.
So one thing I did this summer, and it worked out beautifully, is I themed every month to something different within a yoga practice. So like, for example, July was all about breathing techniques. So I would pick one breathing technique, so maybe Ujjayi breath, or candle breath, or lion's breath, or something. And I would teach it in every single one of my classes that week. And then the next week I would pick a different one. And I'd always start the class, and I'd tell people, hey, this is what we're gonna be doing. And then I tell them the benefits of that breath, and when you might be using that breath outside of this class, and just kind of walked them through it. And then like the next month I did mudras, and then like just continued on, and I just did different things every month. And I said, every month I'm just gonna theme it for something, and this is a way for you to kind of sample different things within the yoga philosophy. But I would always, incorporate breath into the classes. I mean, I think we all do that, but taking the time to be like, okay, here is candle breath, and you want to use candle breath for this, and then the next week being like, hey, here's Ujjayi breath, and here's why we want to use this, and here's the benefits behind it. And that worked out really well. A lot of people really liked it. Just taking the first 5 minutes of class to introduce something different and explain why I'm doing it worked really well.
Thanks, Laura.
Yeah.
I can bounce off that. I like to theme my classes weekly almost. So this week we're gonna work towards hurdler's pose, and then let them know and next week we might work towards forearm stand. So gives them something to look forward to. They know what we're working towards, and it gives your purpose. So it's that outer using your breath and theming, and then kind of just tying it all together.
Yeah.
It helps.
All right. So the questions are on there, and I can't see them. So, so it seems that we agree that this is something worth doing. So then to draw it further, what are ways that we see being successful or having trouble with our group of patrons, being mostly students, some faculty staff who might have been practicing for decades, so varying levels of experience with yoga and possible resistance to things that they might encounter that they're unfamiliar with. So what are things that you've experienced or can speak to?
My biggest suggestion to teachers is also my biggest suggestion to students, and I'm going to try to reel this in because I think Tora knows I could just eat up the rest of our time. I'm trying to what I always remind new teachers of is, number one, the majority of the people who are coming to our classes are coming to our classes for the physical side, and that's okay. Within that, there are going to be a percentage of people who are aware that there's something deeper to yoga, but they're not interested, and that's okay. And then there's going to be a smaller percentage that is aware and is prospectively interested. And I think it's important to stay aware of that and honor that. And it's important to know that historically, this is not limited to America. If you go to India, if you were to have lived at the ashram I lived at, you would see the same thing. And there's some people who are, I'm here for a physical experience, and that's all right. And we don't want to force something on them any more than we want to force a physical experience that they're not ready for. So what I've found is most helpful is, number one, as a teacher, to stay aware of that and be okay with that, while looking for the ways to tactfully introduce concepts as feels appropriate to you, or as is stimulated by what you see in the class. If you see people struggling, then this might be a moment where you say, for example, you think of the concept of balancing sthira and sukha. You think of the balance of steadiness, which requires effort, but sukha, ease, which requires a certain amount of relaxation. And then if you see that, you can remind students, this is part of what we're learning. What we're learning is, what's that balance between enough effort so that we can grow, but also enough ease so that we're still breathing and enjoying the process. And then we can allude to the fact that, hey, this not only doesn't just apply on the mat, but this applies to studying, this applies to our work. And the whole point of the mat is not necessarily to get more easeful in our body, because our body is limited. And our body is going to have shit, you don't say that in class, but it's going to, no matter what we do, it's going to have some ease and some not. But the mental side we can't control. And just like you watch for response to cueing, you know that what it takes to be a good student, a good teacher, is you gradually offer ideas and insights, and you watch your students' receptivity. You keep them safe, but you watch for that saturation point. You watch for, okay, what are they hearing, what are they not, what are they receiving, what are they not? And within the bounds of staying true to yourself, staying true to their health, you know when to say, okay, I'm not going into any more details about what they're activating their phone. And the same thing goes with the philosophy. So you let the class be a cue for what it reminds you of. And again, it could be things like Ishvara Pranadhana, it could be surrender. It could be things like a parigraha, non-coveting. It could be balancing the idea of vairagya, non-attachment, with the idea of practice and the importance of that within the 8 limbs or the 6 limbs, depending on what tradition you're in. So you look for cues that remind you of things. You gently put them out to connect it with the practice. You remind them that this is about something much bigger, and you watch for their receptivity. And when you see a class where they're like, thank you, but I'm just here to get my stretch on, you know, then you go, it's out there, and it's in the back of their mind, and you keep it physical. But you keep putting it, but again, looking for that balance. Anyway, but again, the main thing is we don't want to force the spiritual on them when that's not what they're receptive to. But we also don't want to deny or suppress that, A, because it's part of the tradition, and B, because even if 90% doesn't want it, the 10% it might be transformational. And related to that, and then I'll stop, is also very often I'll just say something like, I know you all know that the physical side is actually just a relatively smart of a much smaller, relatively small part of a much bigger tradition. And if you're ever interested in learning more about that or talking about that, please know I'm always available after class, and I'd be delighted. And so that's a way that you're just saying, hey, it's there. I'm not going to impose it on you, but if you're curious, come to me. And then again, eventually you get classes where you know everybody's interested, and then you know you can introduce me.
Thanks, Michael.
I was gonna bring something up downstairs, but I forgot, but now I remembered. So the bolsters are really small, and I like do yin-yasa sometimes in my class where I start with a little bit of yin, but now I'm actually gonna teach a full yin class, which will be using bolsters, and they're so small that you either have to like stack them up so high that not everyone can get one, or like you only get one and then it's not doing anything for you. So I really think, if possible, bigger bolsters would be
Safety,
ideal.
a safety issue actually is what I would say. Because
Yeah.
I'm teaching in and I've been a little anxious.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna tell you what I'm gonna do and what I do in my class. I take the small bolster, I take 2 blocks, and I wrap them in a blanket.
Yeah.
And then we have enough blankets to kind of usually go around. Some
Yeah.
people are not, and I hustle when Yin Yoga is one of the most physical classes for me, because in Yin Yoga, I'm on my feet constantly, and what I do is I literally just take gear from certain people who are flexible, and I give it to the people who aren't. So that's what I'm constantly doing, is running around and like handing out extra gear, because I notice that some people, they can like put their chin on the ground, and I'm like, okay, cool, you get the small bolster, I'm taking your blocks and blankets, and I'm gonna give it to the guy who's in the back going like crying and
Yeah.
like, please save me, Sam. So
Yeah, you're right.
So
blanket
thank
was
you
gonna
for bringing that up. I'm going to look into stuff, and Nina and Megan and I will get some more stuff. Great. Okay. Anything else on topic to the question?
I always like to start my class or like grounding down and then setting an intention, and that helps build outside of the asana as a practice, like because you're in an asana and you also like just have time to go inward to reflect outward. So I always like to offer up intentions for my students. I offer them up one, or I let them pick their own and touch back on it a few times after class. I feel like intention setting and building is just always a great place to start. It whether you're looking for the spiritual or not.
Yeah.
It's just something to like hold on to along with your breath.
Wonderful. A couple of us have spoken to the idea that more than the physical practice is part of the tradition of yoga. I'd love it if some of us could share which parts of yoga are most important to you, and if there's anything that you want to incorporate into your class but you haven't tried it yet or you don't know how.
Personally, the yamas stand out for me. I use them every day in my life, and I try to teach them as often as I can. Sorry, am I speaking really-
I'm just making sure
Oh,
that it's
okay.
still recording.
I try to incorporate them as much as I can in my yoga classes. And what was the other thing that you said?
What you do want to do in your classes that you might not.
Oh yeah, I really want to start theming. Like you were saying, we'll build up to whatever pose. I want to start doing that some more, and just think like, okay, we're going to be working on this specifically instead of just like working on everything a little bit. I want to like focus in on something specific. Like, okay, I'm gonna like get them ready for back bends today. So maybe when we do the sun salutations, instead of just going up, we go up and then we take a little back bend. Or like when we're in Warrior One, take a little back bend just to like progress it up. Theming is what I want to start incorporating.
Great, thanks.
Yes.
I was gonna say I really like theming, and I think it can be really helpful seasonally to really think about like where we are with the seasons right now. Like, are we in a point where we really want to be grounding down, and so we're theming really feeling your feet and feeling the earth, or are we like at that point where we feel like we want to be like kind of reaching up, and so that we're doing back bends or reaching towards the sky and stuff. And I think that can be really helpful. I also think sometimes with students or students and teaching faculty, I think just kind of reiterating that like you are exactly where you're supposed to be. I would say that is the one thing that I've said to my students that like I've had the most positive feedback later, especially when you get to like a stressful time of year, or especially if you have a student that really feels like, man, I wish I could do yoga, but I have this old knee injury, so then every time I get into this pose, it's terrible, so there must be something wrong with me. Just reminding people like, we're all exactly where we're supposed to be, I think that's one of my favorite themes, and I think it can be really.
Yeah, I do Mr. Rogers all the time. I think you're perfect just the way you are. I do it all the time in class. He's a huge, Mr. Rogers. But it's funny. Every time I say it, people just start giggling. But it's like when they put their head down. Is that what you're talking about? You're kind of seeing them. They're like, you'll see someone do a pose and they're struggling. They put their head down. And so I've been working on trying to notice that and then pull some ideas, like kind of help support them and guide them a little more. So maybe stand next to them and like help them raise up, because I've got a lot of energy that pours out. And I'm like, here, have a little bit of it. It's okay today. So that's what I'm trying to work on too. It's just like trying to be more personable to every student, even if I have 48 people or 46 people in my class. And I think you can do it, because if Mr. Rogers can do it on TV, I can do it one on 48 people, right?
Yeah.
So I like that. Like always, I'm glad I'm not the only instructor. It's like you're exactly where you need to be. It's okay where you are, but it's also okay to want to grow, right?
It's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
Mine that I usually say with that is meeting your body where you're at today, and just like recognizing that. I even tell them within my own body, like if I mess up, if we're doing tree pose and I'm like, I fall out of it, I'm like, you know what, that's not where my body is at today, and that's totally okay. And just like recognizing that when I'm teaching helps a lot of my students. Just like, for some reason, one day you're like, I can go into the splits, and the next day you're like, I can't even touch my toes, and you don't know why. Maybe you slept great, but you're still like, I don't know why my body just can't do it. And it's like, it's okay, relax. You just need to be where your body's at today, and to recognize leaving everything at the door and just showing up on your
And that's
mat.
a good way to introduce philosophy of like ahimsa, right? Kindness to oneself. So we're going back into that, right?
Well, and also santosha, the opposite of aparigraha, so the opposite of coveting, or the complement to non-coveting, is being content with where we are. And likewise, if we remind our students, the word hatha means effort. The word dukkha means pain, and there's a reason they didn't call it dukkha yoga. They could have called it dukkha yoga, but they didn't. It's hatha, it does require effort, so there needs to be a degree of purposefulness. But the idea of working your edge is anathema to hatha yoga. That's not what it's about. It's not about working your edge. Yes, it's about growing in the pose, but our bodies are nonlinear, just like our minds are nonlinear. And that means our practice is going to be nonlinear. We're going to have days where we make advances. We're going to have days where we step back. And sometimes that's going to have a very legitimate physical or emotional cause, and other times that's going to be Tat Sat. That's what it is. And no matter how much yoga we do and how perfect our diet is, our bodies are eventually going to tighten up and decay. So the purpose of asana is not to constantly improve. It's not about constantly getting better. It's certainly not about, as Dana used to say, putting asanas in your pocket. Oh, there's another one I've mastered. It's about, number one, helping our bodies be a little more easeful so that our minds can work on calming and centering the minds. But it's also about becoming more aware of the natural vicissitudes of our body and how they affect us. So the goal of a pose is not necessarily to get more flexible or stronger. The goal of the pose is to say, I'm here right now. How is that affecting me? And yes, if we can get better, that's great. But even more meaningful is, oh, now that I think about it, this doesn't feel so great, or this is hurting me, and hey, maybe that's influencing my mood, which is influencing my thoughts. Maybe that's why I snapped at my colleague or got mad in traffic, or hey, this is feeling really good today. Is there something I ate yesterday that maybe helped that, or did, or didn't
Did
do
I
that
relieve
helped
stress?
that?
Did I communicate with someone that I needed to communicate with? Yeah.
Or is it just a mitzvah? Is it just a blessing that I should celebrate today? So the more we can help our students remember that.
It's a practice.
This is an opportunity, yes, for potential growth, but it's an opportunity for inevitable growth in terms of our understanding. So even if physically we go, that practice sucked, I went backwards on every level, but I learned this, I realized this, I connected with this, that makes a practice luxurious and successful, even if physically we went, and I couldn't do any of that.
That actually reminds me, like, one of my favorite classes to teach is one of the most boring classes for most students. And then I found after teaching it, it wasn't. And I literally teach 5 poses through the whole class. And then I do like little micro things like really basic, swing the arms, right? So at the beginning of class, I don't even warm them up. I'm like, triangle pose. And they're like, oh, this is terrible. And everyone's stiff. And then we'll do some sun salutations. And then we'll do triangle again. And I'll be like, all right, what happens when we lift the rib cage? How does it feel now? And then we just keep going through the whole class. And at the end of class, I throw at them every single cue and everything that we looked at, every cycle of the flow. And then by the end of the class, hopefully they've grown their awareness in that. My usual theme for that one is yoga is a practice to get to know where we are at this moment, so that way that experience can help us as we get older and as we grow. And I think that's what I always try to, that's again your theme too, right? This is actually what yoga is a practice of getting to know where we are every single moment. Like we know our breath, right? That's why we go with the breath. We know our inhale and exhale, we always know it. But we don't always know our triangle, because right now, you guys, I've been practicing so long, I can tell you right now, if I did triangle, my inner thigh and my rib cage is gonna be really painful. Because I practice so much that I know my body enough and my breath enough that I know that's what's gonna happen. How exciting would it be if our students could do that? Sit here, tune into their breath and go, ooh, it's gonna be an inner thigh rib cage day. And then that will be what their practice is. And so when I see my students come back, at the end of the semester, I'll do the same class. And a lot of them were like, today, Sam, it was my rib cage. I'm like, yes, I didn't even have to cue it. And they knew exactly what it was. And then they'll come back to you guys years later and go, I went to a class and I heard your voice. Because you drill it into their head. That's why certain styles of yoga do stick with the same poses. So yes, I love build-up classes. I love sequencing. I love, hey, we're gonna work here to get to here. But also remember that maybe this day is a good day for me and then the next week isn't, and so moving up isn't gonna happen.
Yeah.
So maybe if you do those themes, you guys bring them back again. So that way the student who was having a really bad day has a good day. Maybe they have another bad day, but that's okay too. They'll learn from that.
That's great.
But
And Sam,
that's
I don't want to
awesome.
interrupt.
No,
We
you're
are out
fine.
of time and I want to
Yes.
respect everyone's
Make it
time.
back
Are there any final thoughts or questions, topics you'd like to explore further in a later meeting?
How
Alright.
does everybody teach Sun Salutation A and Sun Salutation B? I would
Great
just
one
like
for
to see
September.
what everyone's lineage does, so then that way we can kind of maybe learn from each other, or maybe come up with one sequence that matches for all of us.
Super.
So that students can grow from class to class and instructor to instructor.
Great. Thanks, Sam.
Thank
All
you,
right.
guys.
Well, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you for everybody not being here. And read your meeting minutes. Ask me if you have any questions. And have a great first week of classes. Okay. Bye.